Lindsey Graham said to you on a conference call on May the 1st, 2024, quote, "This court, the ICC, is for Africans."
Yeah, in fact, he went further. He said this court is for Africa and thugs like Putin. It is not for democracies like Israel and the United States of America.
The man you've just been watching being interviewed is called Karim Khan. He is the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, also known as the ICC. This is the most powerful court on the planet, the one institution that has the authority to put any world leader on trial for war crimes. And of course, this is a global standard. You could put anyone from anywhere in the world on trial, or so we've been led to believe. However, what you've just heard him publicly admit in that clip is that a sitting United States senator called him and told him exactly which countries this court is allowed and isn't allowed to touch. Since this court was created in 2002, it has prosecuted 54 people, 54 officials. Now remember what I asked you to guess at the beginning of the video. How many of the 54 leaders that have been convicted were from the continent of Africa? The answer, shockingly, is 47. In other words, nearly 9 out of every 10 people this court has charged come from the continent of Africa. But the numbers become even more shocking when you look at the court's first 20 years. Before Putin was charged in 2023 and Benjamin Netanyahu, whose case was put forward by South Africa in 2024, every single leader charged by the ICC was African. So for the first 20 years of the court's existence, 100% of the people charged were African.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Sahel Revolution. Today's video is gonna be not only interesting, it's gonna shake you out of your whole foundation of knowing what's going on in the world, because what I found is quite, I don't know whether I should say terrifying, because I think I've been finding things now that makes me think, you know, like, just think as a human being on really who has been running this world, who has been really controlling the world. And you also come to realize that the people that you have been inwardly blaming, which is obviously our African leaders, has been really, really under pressure in such a way that that's probably why they act like they have lost, you know, to use common sense. Like, you know, when we are talking about our leaders, they are kind of selling out and so on. They are selling out, but I realize that also, except for the selling out, there's a pressure that has been going on for years. And when you have been going through something for years, it becomes almost like you don't realize that you are in autopilot, if you know, if I have to say that. So now the ICC, which is obviously the International Criminal Court, has actually been created just for Africans. I had no clue about that. Obviously, there's things like IMF and so on that you quite literally begin to understand that the way they give money, like, it's almost like when you, like, the countries that are developed get less in interest than the countries that actually need less interest to be charged on their loans. But when you look at the banks are actually doing the same thing. So I thought maybe it's the way they think the other countries won't pay. But at the same time, you realize also that how could those countries, especially mostly African countries that has so much resources, so rich in minerals, not be able to actually pay? So it's actually a game. Anyway, I don't want to waste much of your time. I want you to listen to this whole conversation, and then we can talk about it.
Let me start with what the ICC actually is, the International Criminal Court, which was created in 1998 through an agreement called the Rome Statute and then officially opened in 2022. It was built and funded primarily by European nations and is located in The Hague, Netherlands. The idea behind it was simple. No leader on earth, no matter how powerful, is above the law. If you commit a war crime, a genocide, or crimes against humanity, this court would put you on trial, and that means any leader from anywhere. At least that was the promise. Now remember what I asked you to guess at the beginning of the video. How many of the 54 leaders that have been convicted were from the continent of Africa? The answer, shockingly, is 47. In other words, nearly 9 out of every 10 people this court has charged come from the continent of Africa. But the numbers become even more shocking when you look at the court's first 20 years. Before Putin was charged in 2023 and Benjamin Netanyahu, whose case was put forward by South Africa in 2024, every single leader charged by the ICC was African. So for the first 20 years of the court's existence, 100% of the people charged were African. So now here the argument that this is a tool used to target Africa starts to look much less like conspiracy theory when you look at those numbers. So let's take Iraq, for example. British forces were accused of committing documented war crimes there. The ICC opened an examination and there wasn't enough evidence to move forward. The case was closed. The same thing happened with Afghanistan and the United States. American forces were accused of documented war crimes and the ICC opened an investigation, but then the case was closed. The list of examples of countries and leaders that have been looked at like this by the ICC goes on, but still no convictions. So now the question becomes, is Africa the only place where these crimes happen? And then there's places like Sudan on the continent, where right now the United Nations describes the conflict as one of the worst humanitarian crises the world has seen for many decades. Mass killings, famine being used as a weapon, millions of people forced from their homes. Yet the ICC has not issued a single new warrant or brought a single new charge linked to the current conflict. This is despite multiple groups and agencies involved in the conflict having documented links to the United Arab Emirates. So there seems to be a clear contradiction here. For years, the ICC focused almost entirely on African leaders. Yet when everyday Africans are the victims of some of the worst humanitarian crises, the court has become silent and or unable to act. For the first time this court ever engaged a non-African leader was Vladimir Putin in 2023. This might not be such a surprise, as Vladimir Putin is now known to be an ally of many African countries that are trying to make themselves independent, particularly away from France, which is a key member of the EU, which puts massive funding into the ICC. The second significant person that was not African was Benjamin Netanyahu in 2024. By now, the whole world has seen what's going on in Gaza, all of the bombs, even what's going on in Lebanon right now. You can even say what's going on in Iran could be considered a war crime. Remember the girls' school that was hit and targeted by the United States, supposedly the most sophisticated war weapon carrying countries in the world? Well, South Africa said enough was enough, and they put forward the case against Benjamin Netanyahu regarding what's going on in Gaza. And what happened the moment this court tried to hold a Western ally to account? A sitting United senator picks up the phone and calls the chief prosecutor, telling him, hey, you're not following the script here, buddy. Yes, we'll accept Putin because he's a thug and he doesn't represent Western interests, but this court is for Africans, those blacks from the continent. And you're supposed to know this. What the hell are you doing prosecuting our guy, Bibi Netanyahu? Who cares that the South Africans are the ones bringing forth the case? What do those guys know about separating people because of their ethnic origins and then systematically using weapons to kill them? But I digress. And that phone call is not alleged. You heard the clip at the beginning of the video. Not only that, but this has been verified by Al Jazeera, Middle East Eye, and multiple other outlets. Pressure to toe the line has also come from the United Kingdom. In April 2024, UK Foreign Secretary, ex-Prime Minister David Cameron personally called Khan and threatened to pull British funding from the ICC if it continued to pursue trying to charge Israel. This is a major minister from the United Kingdom, a country that is integral to putting this court together. Remember its goals that we talked about at the beginning? Freedom and justice for all. No matter who it is, nobody's above the law. Well, Khan issued those warrants anyway. And what happened? Within a few months, suddenly a sexual misconduct investigation appeared against him. A brand new legal process was invented, one that had never been used before in the court's entire history. It was made specifically for this case on him. The independent judges reviewed everything and cleared him. An investigation found no misconduct. Yet a number of Western countries have not been satisfied with this outcome. Try him again until we find some dirt on him. African countries that observed and reviewed this situation voted in favor of the judge's decision, ruling that no misconduct had occurred, it had been diligently looked at, and the findings are the findings. Which is kind of ironic because it means that the very continent this court was built to prosecute ended up being the one defending its integrity against the countries that built it. But some of these numbers and stats are only half of the story. because it's not just about who the ICC charges and who it protects, but it's also about how this court has been actively used as a tool to remove African leaders who stand in the way of whatever the West's interests are.
Having listened to that and realizing that for the first 20 years when this was created, really it was just African leaders. And when you look at the person who was obviously added there, who is Putin, you realize also that that's because he actually has been the one trying to support these African countries. So no wonder he's actually on the list. But when you take 47 out of 54 leaders that has been probably, I think the president of North Korea is probably, because I'm not. Now, when you take 47 out of 54 and you realize that 47 of those leaders, now when you take 47 leaders out of 54 and those 47s are actually African leaders, no wonder that guy says that it was actually created for that. Now, that creation will actually be like a specific targeting of those African leaders that want to nationalize their resources for their citizens. Presidents like, for example, Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba and all that, that will definitely be, the kind of presidents or leader that will be targeted, even though they did, because remember, these people can create something that you did even if you haven't done it. You don't have to be a real war criminal for you to be prosecuted if they want to prosecute you, because the real war criminals right now, as we are speaking to you, are not even being prosecuted. So who decide who and who must be prosecuted based on what you just listened to now? It's, we are living in a world where only God can save us, guys, because this is complete, I don't even know what to say. But this is like literally we are being led by thugs, by perverts, by terrorists, by criminals. These are the people that are actually really, really running this world, to be quite honest. And Jesus said it so well. We don't belong to this world. Like, honestly speaking. Anyway, guys, take care. Bye.